Now that the core burger builder functionality is finished for now, and as I said, we will revisit this later in this course to also submit this to a server, to have multiple pages in this application, and much more. Before we move towards these steps, let's finish this app by adding a toolbar and a side drawer. This, of course, is crucial because later, once we add multiple pages, we need to have some way of navigating there. And every application should probably have a toolbar. It makes it look better. So let's close the components, the burger folder in the components folder, and layout and UI so that we have a clean working project here. And let's add a new folder in the components folder over there now. I'll call it navigation because I want to store all navigation related components like the toolbar, like the side drawer in there. And the toolbar is actually with what I'll start. So in navigation, let me add a new folder, toolbar. And in there, unsurprisingly, let's add a toolbar.js file. Now that toolbar.js file, how should this look like? How should the toolbar look like? It's actually going to be a functional component because I don't need to manage any state in there. I expect to get some props there, and then, as you know, we're outputting some JSX. For that reason, let's also import React from React here, and let's export this toolbar function here as the default of this file. How shall the toolbar then look like from a JSX perspective? I want to have a wrapping header element because the toolbar is the header of my web application. And inside there, I want to have a couple of elements in the end. I want to have some button which opens the side drawer, and we're going to remove this dummy placeholder here and replace it with a real button later on. But for now, let's keep this div here. So I want to have that. Then I also want to have a div which contains my logo, and we'll have to add this. And thereafter, I want to have a nav item which contains my navigation links. So basically, this will contain some unordered list with all the links. Now I'll remove the unordered list for now and just leave the ... placeholder here. So all these are placeholders right now. We'll replace these elements with their own components. A logo component which we can reuse, a menu component which we could reuse, and a navigation items component which we also want to reuse since we'll also have a side drawer for mobile layouts. So we might not always have all navigation items in the toolbar. Sometimes we want to shift them to the side drawer, and therefore having a reusable component for these items makes a lot of sense. Before creating any subcomponents, let's create that base toolbar though. And of course, this toolbar will also need some styling. So for that, I'll add my toolbar.css file here too. In there, I'll create a toolbar CSS class, which we can later import because we're using CSS modules, of course. And I want to have a toolbar which has a height of 56 pixels and a width of 100%. Now, the goal here is to develop this application mobile first. So I'll first of all set up the toolbar settings here for mobile devices, and then we'll have us look later in this module here where we need to adjust it to also look good on desktop devices. Though for the toolbar, most settings should actually work for both desktop and mobile, which is why I start with the toolbar. So let's now set the position to fixed so that it's always at the top even if we scroll. And for it to sit on the top, of course I need to set top 0 and left 0. I then give the toolbar a background color, and here I already picked a nice brownish color, 703B09. That should look really nice. I'll set the display to flex so that all the items in the toolbar are aligned next to each other because the default direction of Flexbox is row, positioning elements next to each other even if they are block elements. And check out some articles about Flexbox if this concept is totally new to you. Flexbox has this justify content property which defines how the elements which are wrapped by the toolbar classed item here should be spread out. And here I want to use space between so that the available space is filled with the elements inside this toolbar element in the end, and that they automatically keep some distance from each other. Align items then determines how they should be aligned vertically, and there I want to center elements. Finally, I'll add some padding. The padding here should be 0 from top and bottom, but 20 pixels from left and right. And then I'll set up box sizing and set this to border box to make sure that the toolbar is sized correctly even with the padding. And finally, I need a set index. And here I will pick 90. Important, of course, this number here has to be lower than the number we picked for the backdrop. And there I chose 100 because the backdrop should go above the toolbar. At least I want to have this behavior here. Now I'll add one more rule in the CSS file. I want to control how the nav item is displayed when nested inside a toolbar, which it'll of course will be. There I want to set a height of 100% too, so that in the navigation I can then also control the height relative to the toolbar height and can make sure that the navigation items span the full height of this toolbar. With that should do it for now. Let's go back to the toolbar.js file now and let's import our CSS classes. So I'll simply add import classes from /toolbar CSS, and then I'll add this to my header. I'll there add a class name and set this to classes and use that toolbar CSS class we just created. And as always, keep in mind, this import in the end simply imports a couple of strings, the dynamically created CSS class names, which were simply adjusted to be scoped to this component. And then we're assigning the class name, which was generated here. Now, with that, we should have a basic working toolbar. Now, of course, we want to use it. And where shall we add this toolbar then? Now, of course, you could argue that you want to add it in the burger builder, because that is where we want to have a toolbar at the top. But in the end, we want to have a toolbar at the top of any page we load. Therefore, we could use the app.js file. But the best place, of course, is our layout. This, in the end, is about laying out our page. And this is where we already added some placeholders for the toolbar here. So in the layout component, let's import the newly created toolbar component from that toolbar file under navigation, toolbar, and then it's toolbar.js, as always, without the file extension. And then we can simply replace our placeholder here with this newly imported toolbar component. We can use a self-closing component. And now make sure to save all files, make sure npm start is still running, and you should see the toolbar like this. Now, it's not super pretty. The text probably should be white, but we're going to replace all these things with some real content later on anyways. One thing we also can notice is that our main page here is overlapped by the toolbar. So that main element here, which has a margin top of 16 pixels, should probably add these 16 pixels to the toolbar height of 56 pixels, which we set up. So we can quickly do that in the layout CSS file, where I do define this content class, which sets the margin top. And I want to change this to 72, which essentially is just the 56 pixels height of the toolbar plus the 16 pixels height or margin top actually I wanted to have from before. Now if I save this, you see the burger is nicely positioned again. So with that, we added the toolbar. In the next step, let's work on that logo so that we get a nice looking logo in this application too.